Roald Dahl, Taste and Other Tales. Introduction. Roald Dahl was born in South Wales in 1916 to Norwegian parents, and his early life was overshadowed by sad events. His sister and his father died within a few weeks of each other when he was very young. He joined the Royal Air Force when the war started. When it ended, he became increasingly known as a writer. Taste. It is the story of Richard Pratt, who loved food and wine. He was happy to share his knowledge of wine with friends. At dinners at Mike's house, he was challenged to get the age and name of the wine served right. On this particular day, the bet was Mike's daughter's hand if Richard won. If he lost the bet, he would be without his houses. Pratt won the bet, but Mike's servant appeared with the glasses Richard had forgotten in the room where the bet wine rested before dinner. In other words, Richard cheated, as he had probably read the wine label before. A swim. The story takes place on a ship. The auction begins in the smoking room. Mileage numbers in the range between 820 and 840 were auctioned. Mr. Bodyball noticed that the weather was bad and paid £200 for mileage less than 820. The value of all miles sold totaled £2,100. The next day, the weather was fine, and the ship was moving faster, leaving Mr. Bodyball hopeless. He had the idea of jumping off the ship to swim, so they would have to stop it to rescue him. He jumped up, hoping that a woman who was nearby would call for help, but she was really old and didn't call for anyone. Mr. Bodyball was left behind. Mrs. Bixby and the Colonel's Coat. Mr. and Mrs. Bixby lived in a smallish flat somewhere in New York City. Mr. Bixby was a dentist who earned an average income. Mrs. Bixby was a big, active woman with a wet mouth. Once a month, always on Friday afternoons, Mrs. Bixby would get on the train at Pennsylvania Station and travel to Baltimore to visit her old aunt. But the real purpose of her trips was to visit a gentleman known as the Colonel, and she spent the greater part of her time in Baltimore in his company. When she was at that train station, the Colonel had a gift delivered, a beautiful and elegant fur coat. It came with a farewell letter. She, not knowing what to do, left her coat at a pawn shop in New York, and would return to pick it up on Monday. However, her husband said he would go to the pawn shop himself to pick something up for her, with the note Mrs. Bixby brought. The husband chose a simple necklace over a coat. Miss Pulteney, Mr. Bixby's secretary, kept the coat. It's not known how she got it. The Way Up to Heaven. Mrs. Forster has always been a woman who was afraid of losing train, plane, boat, plays, rehearsals, buses, and many others.
This fear was the most at disease. She wasn't a nervous woman, but she couldn't be anywhere later. As a result, a small muzzle in the corner of her lip. I would begin to tremble. It was not very much, but the annoying thing was that the problem you refused to disappear until an hour or so after they tried our plan. They saw the machine. Closer into a house and finds a black box in which he is curious and goes there to see what he finds. For a little longer, Klausner walked on the arrows in the black box. Then he straightened up and in somewhat excited whisper said, "Now we'll try again." The movements of his hand were quick and exact. He breathed and all through his mother in quaking, loud breaths of excitement. The leg of lamp on the table behind her there were two tall glasses, some bottles, and a bouquet of ice. Mary Malone was waiting for her husband to come home from work. When the clock said 10 minutes to 5, she began to listen, and a few moments later, at the whistle time, she heard the car tires on the drive, the car door closing, the footsteps passing the window, the K-train in the look. Biff and the fate. The doctor stood beside the bed looking down at the pale, tired face of the young woman. He had never seen her before today. She and her husband were new people in the town. The barman's wife, who had come to help, Bad told him that the husband worked at the local custom house on the border, and that the two of them had arrived quite suddenly at the small hotel about 3 months before. Poison. It must have been around midnight when I drove home, and was pulled into the driveway. I turned off the lights of the car so that the being around swung in through the window of the side bedroom and woke Harry Pop. He spoke slowly, whispering and word carries fall separately, and I pushed the door right open and started to go quickly across the room.